warm welcome to the Digital India Summit series. I am Sonali Krishna. Now, it's no surprise that the pandemic has impacted learning methods and teaching practices, redrawing the trajectory of education. On one hand, the pandemic has thrown academic systems, conventional teaching practices, learning techniques, and processes into a complete disarray. On the other hand, it has emerged as an accelerator for digital learning. In fact, research reveals that by mid-April 2020, a whopping 94% of learners globally were affected by the pandemic. This represents about 1.58 billion youth and children enrolled for pre-primary and higher education across 200 countries. Now, while the pandemic has compelled learners to shift away from classrooms in several parts of the globe, this has in turn created opportunities for education technology to make significant inroads with the conventional learning ecosystem. Now, as we gear up for a post-COVID world, how are online learning models and methods going to deliver a traditional experience via a completely digital classroom that offers flexibility, security, comfort, and accessibility? Well, to answer and navigate through this entire topic of redefining education through digitization, I'm joined by Dr. Anil Sahasrabuddhe, Chairman AICTE, Major Harsh Kumar, Secretary NCERT, and Vrinda Swarup, former Secretary, Department of School Education and Literacy, Ministry of HRD, Government of India. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Truly a pleasure having you for this particular conversation. Mrs. Swarup, if you could just take me through your observations of what we have seen from April 2020 until date, where we've seen a sudden transformation, almost a compulsion to adopt online education. In your opinion, because of the years of experience you bring to the table, what has been the great benefits of having an online education system, and of course the major cons where the education system is compromised because of online learning?
2020, especially because the COVID situation deprived our children from attending regular school. So the question was either to leave it out in the cold or to be able to directly access and be able to help students to keep up with their learning and, of course, to progressively advance in their learning. Sure. So I think the change which came about was that all teachers, schools adapted, governments adapted, parents, students, to the digital mode, by which at least you could carry engagement with learning into the homes of children who were unable to come to school. And since then, it's been on and off. But the downsides, kind of learning which happens in a school environment, is not only academic and cognitive development, but there are lots of ancillary advantages of being in a school. You learn many values, you learn many ways of, dealing with your problems, dealing with your friends, dealing with people you don't get along with, and so on. So there's a huge learning exercise apart from academics, which goes on in schools. So we are at a loss for that because the environment is different. But more than anything else, if you look at our large government school system, and where we are looking at children from very disadvantaged sections, where access to internet, access to a device itself is a challenge. I think that is another thing which has shown us that pedagogy has to change, yes. And tomorrow there must be an incorporated pedagogy with digital resources, which is now an essential part of a teacher's tool, her pedagogy, the classroom practices. But the second point also is that she has to be able to develop systems by which she can reach out to all the children. And I think governments will have to redefine what are the essentials of schooling. It's not just a school building and a blackboard and a copybook and a pencil, but I think you have to look now at also digital devices and connectivity, which has become a very, very central part of education now.
Mrs. Sahasrabuddhe, in today's day and age, people are much more digitally savvy than, let's say, I was when I passed out of my 10th or 12th, or was going to do a postgrad. So today, children young adults are much more digitally savvy. Do you think going forward in terms of technical education, higher education, this will be the norm where we will go all online, or do you think having a classroom atmosphere and physical interaction and engagement cannot be replaced by the online ecosystem?
Sonali, Brindaji has already pointed out few factors for school education in terms of whether it is cognitive learning, catching up the values, or creating empathy factor amongst our students, or even social activities, cultural activities, sports. I don't think you can do drama or a music, on the online mode as effectively as it is, real world. Same is the case with sports. You cannot play cricket or football or anything for that matter, and therefore physical has its own value, and this cannot be ignored, whether it is school education or higher education. And in fact, when it comes to vocational education and technical education, it is further more important because there are lots of laboratory classes, workshops where they have to work by hand on the machines, on the tools. And without doing that, only in a virtual mode, they can see the pictures or videos, but without handling them, they will not be becoming vocationally, capable, competent in order to run the industry later. And therefore, the physical has its own meaning. But however, the strength of the online or strength of the digital medium to learn has also been, tested during the pandemic. Pandemic gave us an opportunity. And as pointed out by, again, Madam Vrindaji, that whether it is school teachers or the higher technical education or technical teachers, or it is students from nursery KG to the high school and university, all of them have graduated to learning the online mode of education. But the weaknesses that exist in this mode do continue in terms of not only device, but also in terms of connectivity. Last but not the least, in most of these technical programs, we are emphasizing on internships, which was not the order of the day earlier, and therefore employability used to be staggering around only 25%, 30%. And since we started making internship mandatory for students of technical education going to industry and having first-hand exposure to what happens there, the employability has been rising to now above 55%. During pandemic, we also realized that it is not possible to have a physical internship. So how having an virtual internship, but still create our students who are capable of handling the situation is a challenge. And we have been navigating through by creating an internship portal where more than 70 lakh students have joined, whereas our capacity to provide internship is only 12 lakh. So I think there is still a big gap that exists between actual hands-on learning, which we are doing it both by physical means as well as what we call as digital means. But what will remain learning during pandemic is new systems will emerge. For example, we have got a flipped classroom methodology or a blended classroom, or we talk about virtual class. All these mixed models will emerge as the successful models where you can learn from anyone, anywhere, anytime from the best of the teachers on one side, but for actual hands-on experience and for really getting the feel of what education is all about in a real classroom. So that blend is going to happen.
Coming to you, Major Kumar, you've heard, Madam Swaroop and Mr. Sahasrabudhe. Are you, in line with what they're saying, or do you believe that this online education that we are suddenly seeing thanks to COVID is a boon and is here to stay even in a post-COVID world?
What Sir has said, it is like, उन्होंने गागर में सागर भर दिया. He has told everything and what the government is doing, what is need to be done about the digital divide. And obviously at that point of time, it was our compulsion to do that. Now the mode has come up in the school, the blended mode of education. We have to think about the last student sitting in the last village. And that Sir has very correctly brought out that connectivity problem is there. And so many courses and so many opportunities have come. But do you think that can we do medical education online? Can we do 4G training online? So there are so many things that there is no alternative of face-to-face training or face-to-face education. Now it is for sure that it is not going to get back to the same mode what we were earlier. What was it has changed. But now we have to decide that what is the limit and how we are going to use the blended mode and how we are going to implement it to the last village. In fact, in that period only NCERT had come out with handbook of what should be the digital mode of education and what should be the limit. So all those things we have already given SOPs on that, and our team is working on that. Our academicians are working on that, and no doubt it will come. It will take some time. We have come a long way from 2020 since the inception of this pandemic, and so many new opportunities have come. But then this line has to be decided, and the schools have to be given freedom to how they teach their children, because they will call the children in a different time, maybe some classes on some day and some classes on another day, and but then it has to be done. We have to think on that line only. If you see, I am also father of children studying in 7th 8th class, 4th, but now they don't want to go to school because they are finding this more convenient, because they are forgetting their writing skills, speaking skills, and the social skill, which is more important.
If and when we combat this virus and we get back to normalcy, do you see the world, reverting to what it was in 2019 in terms of, the lens of education, where we go back to school, we go back to colleges, and we have a centralized learning place there?
So speaking for school education, perhaps, I think I would see schools reopening and children coming back to school. I don't think those options are there at that stage of the learning cycle. But having said that, I think pedagogy will undergo a lasting change. And by that, I mean that the use of a digital media in transacting what would normally be done in a face-to-face classroom will also be a blended way of teaching, where the comfort zone of both the teachers and the students on the amalgamation of digital media in the teaching learning process will be of a much higher order than it was earlier. So this is definitely going to make a difference. And I say it in the positive sense because it helps learning. The second is, I think people have discovered that reiterative or supplementary learning is something which by digital means is highly beneficial. So, so the differentials of learning which are there in a classroom, and where teachers need to access certain set of students for further progress in learning levels, I think this is a medium which can be increasingly used, whether to access students even when school hours are over, or to help students who have, let's say, taken ill. So there'll be a host of new, activities around supplementary learning, which will be very beneficial for our students. The third area, which I think it is going to be able to access and be able to help a lot of students, is children with disabilities, or children who have, and this happens in rural India quite a lot, that because of their own illness or illness in the family, especially girls, get disconnected with schools. So there are ways in which you can continue to engage them. We have a huge open school system in the country, both from the national level and some states. Now, again, the digital means is a much better way of accessing and keeping in touch and contact with distance learners than the old postal system used to be. So there is going to be a lot of potential in terms of outreach, in terms of engaging students who cannot periodically attend school on a, and so on. So I think the potential is huge. And lastly, I think it is for children at a certain stage, and I'm talking of high school students, where they can themselves liberally use the digital media to be able to develop their own trajectory of learning faster and more deeper and more research oriented. And this is something which will not be regarded anymore as, don't spend your time so much on this media, go back to your text. I think that whole mentality has changed and will continue to remain changed, and for the better, where students who want to go in for better depth of learning will be able to freely do that. And that's a great learning for them for higher education and sustained studies.
Sure. Mr. Sasupathy, the same question to you. We going back to the conventional ways of learning? And secondly, how skilled do you think right now the proficiency of teachers are to actually adopt this digitized ecosystem and interact with students, because it comes easier to students than it comes to teachers?
So number one, having learned lessons during this pandemic, we all want that pandemic should end as soon as possible. Return to the classes. We have to meet each other, socialize, and learn lessons not only in the classroom but in the laboratories and workshops. This has to happen and will happen and has to happen. But along with that, whatever learning we have undergone, this period has to be used effectively for better efficiency. For example, a student in a rural area, a college which has very limited number of faculty members, he or she is not able to take the courses of the choice of the student because there are no faculty available. Today, through the MOOC platform or the online platform, from anywhere a student can learn that particular knowledge which one wants to aspire to learn actually. So this is a power of the technology, and that's why both UGC, AICTE regulations have permitted earlier 20% of the courses of the curriculum to be used from MOOC. Today it has been extended to 40%. Then supplementary learning, which Madam Vrindaji rightly pointed out, apart from the curriculum, we have a platform created by us which is called NEET, National Educational Alliance for Technology, which is AI-based learning, which is permitted for students to learn whatever subject they want and by paying a small fee. So in an artificial intelligence based technology tools, a brighter student can finish a course faster and a weaker student will take a little longer in a different mode or different route. But end of the day, all of them will be equals. I think this is the power of technology which we must be using. You talked about teachers. Teacher training is going to be the most important thing in this new world, because whatever they did during their times is no more going to be valid. We talked about flipped classroom or blended classes, wherein teachers have to understand, students have to be given exercise to learn something on their own from homes, and then a lot of discussion, mentoring sessions, solving problems in the classroom. And this we have to teach our teachers themselves. And therefore, teacher training is going to be very important. And wherever our teachers are going to be involved in the online, unless they become more interesting than even in a classroom, you cannot hold the students in the online class. They will all switch on the cameras, switch off the cameras, and we assume that they are learning. They may not be learning. And therefore, making classes interesting is another area which our teachers have to learn. And therefore, faculty development program, our certification program for faculty of 8 modules, which AICTE started 3 years ago, is going to be very valuable in the pandemic and post-pandemic period.
What is the government's thought now and thinking in terms of initiatives on how the educational ecosystem will look once we, of course, emerge victorious from this pandemic?
So as far as digital learning is concerned, we have got a unit CIET. So that they have under PM e-Vidya program, class 1 to 12. We are running 24 hours, 6 hours class that is being repeated. And so 12 channels are running for class 1 to 12. Then we are going for community radio. We are making use of community radio for the various courses. Then as Sir has said, that number of massive online courses that has also been started. Then one of the largest program of training the teachers, that is NISTA, the teachers and school heads regarding all this, especially in this pandemic also. So that is also now begun online. And what NCERT is doing for making SOPs for the parents also and for the teacher training, we are primarily, one of the main duties of NCERT is teacher training, and we have got our regional institute of education at Ajmer, Bhubaneswar, Bhopal, Mysore, and Shillong, and we have got demonstrative multipurpose school also, where we can utilize this, what child is learning. So on that aspect also, NCERT is doing a lot, and thankfully in this our national education policy, lot of stress has been given on teachers training, and we are going for a new B.Ed courses, standard B.Ed courses for the entire country. So a lot of effort is going from NCERT, and that is visible on our website. The thing is, the only thing is that it has to be disseminated to the larger population.
Sure. I think what has come across, very strongly in this session with all you, education luminaries, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that online education or digitization of education can be supplemented via the conventional face-to-face teaching methods and cannot be a replacement. So while we are in the pandemic forced to be fully online, when the world normalizes, we will have to go back to traditional, more conventional methods, and of course accelerate the education process with aids of technology. I hope I've summarized what three of you have tried to say. Thank you so much for your time. This has been very enlightening, and hopefully people who are watching this will take notes on how to better our current situation with the education landscape. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.